and then I'm a joint lecturer at Roma University. And today I'm going to talk about mediation. Mediation is one of the three conferences, with a special focus on multilingual classrooms. But first of all, I would like to give you the outline of my presentation. We are going to set a theoretical background. Thank you. It's much. Okay. Well, mediation in context is a theoretical background. Maybe it's too much. Yes. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to show you some materials and tasks that I'm implementing in my teaching at the university. Then the research context starts of English as a foreign language, or precisely English as a lingua franca context at the university. And we'll focus on teachers' attitudes as well as students' attitudes. And then a final focus will be on ELT environments where sharing, inclusion, negotiation of meaning. With a special focus on the Erasmus project I'm working on as a researcher at this moment, which is developing a CPD course. We are going to present the course tomorrow with Professor Lucia Gallopriore and Sandra Cannelli. And let's start with the rationale. Well, mediation has acquired a lot of attention in language research in the last decade, as well as in language teaching, as well as in translation studies, and of course in the CFR, as you already know. Learners in this perspective are considered mediators, social agents, facilitating socialization and cooperation. In the Erasmus project I am working on in this moment, since last year, we are working on the designing of a CPD course in English as a lingua franca practices for inclusive multilingual classrooms. This is the project. Which is the acronym, and providing teachers tools and strategies to implement at every level of teaching linguistic diversity, classroom cooperation, critical thinking, and creative use of language and pro-linguistic repertoires. I would like to start defining mediation. It's a very multifaceted concept that's been defined in language teaching, of course, in sociology, in professional development. For example, I'm a mediator in migration context, working with asylum seekers, refugees, and migrants in general. Translation studies, of course, applied linguistics, as in my field, for example, and pedagogy, of course. I would like to show you some theoretical background, some words maybe you are interested in to read. Sociocultural theory, first of all, and language acquisition, language learning, language socialization in Brian Northworks, and Ricardo as well, intercultural communication, translation studies, interlingual intercultural mediation migration context, and of course any kind of plurilingual context, for example in European context. A lot of publications have been produced in the last decades about that. As for sociocultural theory, just some reflection about these two theories, language socialization and launch of sociocultural theory, where learning is conceived as a way of cognitive mediation in L2. And in language socialization, by its way in 2006, the relationship between language learning and social learning implies social activities. Mediation allows interconnections, so mediation and English is a lingua franca. First of all, at the basis of any kind of interaction, especially in migration context, we can define power status asymmetries and what's involved. For example, so Italian experts, Western, non-Western migrant, etc. And Barbara Sedlova has already defined this kind of appropriating English language in order to communicate and not conforming to native speaker norms of usage. For example, in interactions involving Western experts and non-Western migrants. So English as a lingua franca is considered as developing from transfers from L1 languages, where schemata, meant as background knowledge, actually where can shape the use of language, the use of English language, generating F variations as defined by Wilson and then Guido. So, more precisely, the grammar structures are transferred from the L1 to the use of English as a lingua franca, but in this kind of interactions, especially where Western and non-Western speakers interact, we may define inaccessibility in terms of sense of meaning, as well as unavailability of concepts and unacceptability. So here, mediation is needed in this kind of framework. In the CFR, mediation has been defined since 2001, and then in 2017 has been defined along with reception, interaction, and production, and a lot of activities related to mediation have been developed. Mediating text, mediating concept, mediating communication. And precisely in the CFR, there is a very important stress on the vision of the learners as social agents, as social mediators. Here, precisely taken from the companion volume, the role of language in processes like creating a space and condition for communication, shaping text, shaping messages, simplifying, elaborating a text. And in general, mediation, so behind all this theoretical background, involves always bridging across spaces, and this is very common, and this is what actually happens in interactions. Okay, behind this scientific and literature review, the present research is based on the language learning context where multilinguals and students coming from different backgrounds interact together. And the aim is that of defining new skills to facilitate this kind of communication, as well as exploiting transversal skills and strategies as powerful learning tools involved in the learning process, exploiting the potential new multilingual landscapes coming from our classrooms, and then training future mediators, social agents, in order to avoid communicative miscommunication, breakdowns, etc. And of course, developing as pedagogical implications, new teaching materials. But first of all, I would like to hear your voices. And my first question is, do you teach in a multilingual and multicultural context? And what about implementing mediation in your experience? Please, first of all, discuss pros and cons of this implementation with the people sitting next to you. Just for 1 minute. Maybe you are alone. You may discuss it. Okay.
far from the students themselves or herself, not necessarily living in a country where
What about mediation activities?
The odd thing is that teaching English, they often find things that native Italian students find difficult, they find others easier. So it could be linguistic sequences, clusters of things, grammar, structures, anything like that, phonetics, anything like that. So that actually helps, but they usually, in their own way, they participate in critical ways, so they can actually bring forward this issue where native Italian students might think, well, oh, okay, I thought I was actually saying it correct, and they actually learn from each other, so that's an advantage. Negative could just slow it down a little bit, it could shift a little bit of the level of the class.
Thank you. Other voices? Other experience?
Okay, I'm a PE teacher. Yeah, so I was taught with families from Vietnam. I was saying that since I teach in a public Italian school, I teach in Italian, and so mediation for me is important because I'm a Greek teacher. Otherwise, I think that it's considered mainly from us, the teachers and the language teacher. And you were telling me that in Vietnam.
Yes, in Vietnam, it is the content is not multilingual, just bilingual, and it's not a multicultural content. So we do not have kind of migrant teachings or teachings for migrant or foreigner, just Vietnamese. So it is the ELT context.
But do you have to mediate?
Of course.
From linguistic perspective, even from a cultural one?
Yes. For example, let's take an example. We have students of different backgrounds, and the two typical one, the first one they come from city, and the second one they come from rural areas. So because of the two different backgrounds, so we have different approaches, kind of support on mediation. So the teacher's responsibility is to balance that kind of in their practice. So it is something about related to the mediations in the class, in the practice.
Yes, thank you so much. Your voices. Yes, and let's have a look at what actually may happen at the university from language mediation. The context is that of implementing this kind of activities within courses of English language and translation, okay? Within undergraduate courses as well as postgraduate degree courses, our students will be operators in intercultural communication, will be mediators in a migration context of refugee organization and programs, so this is the setting. And I'm going to show you 3 examples of activities, starting from the new companion volume descriptors about mediation, so mediating concept is the first one. And here the focus in this example is developing communication strategies for specialized discourse. Okay? For example, critical discourse analysis of audiovisual translation in multicultural context. Here my students have to select an autonomous decision, an audiovisual material, a TV series or a movie, and so on, but with certain features. Yeah.
Sorry, what does the acronym stand for?
Audiovisual translation. Yes, thank you for your question. Yes, so audiovisual translation, so scripts, as well as scenes and settings related to multicultural contexts. In balance of this activity, they can in a cooperative way. They are always working in group, critical thinking and planning, and reflection activities on cross-cultural interactions. And this is one of their examples. Some of my students here maybe know the Big Bang Theory, decided to work in this TV series, and here these images are taken from their final portfolio for their oral exam. They have to explain why they've decided to work in this TV series, and besides they have to select some scenes where they can work in cross-cultural interactions. And here they are explaining the setting, which is that of this Indian boy and Indian girl interacting in a Western society, so a lot of stereotypes, reconstruction stereotypes, and working on this kind of. So in this mediation activity, by means of this task, my students are able to enhance their critical thinking about mediation and mediating concepts. Of course, in a scripted interaction, so not in a spontaneous one. The other one is related to mediating text. The focus here is on multimodal dimensions language usage. Multimodality is related to non-verbal and verbal tools in conveying messages. The example of the mediation task is alpha-aware reformulation and translation of an advertising campaign with relevant intercultural features in it. So alpha-aware, they have to analyze an original campaign in Italian or in English, and then they have to translate it or reformulate it for an international audience. So considering a lot of features, even cross-cutting features, transversal features. And in this way, they have the possibility to exercise the processing of text, personal criticism, and the creative use of language, of course. And this is one of the main examples they produced. This one is the original campaign from Italian, a campaign devoted to Marche, which is a very famous region in Italy, and they decided to deconstruct and then reformulate a multimodal framework of the campaign using different images, and then another slogan, and then a map of Italy, and then different ways of transportation systems. They believe that the train may be so international as a way of reaching market. The last one is related to mediating communication, and the focus here is on cross-cutting dimension of language learning. A role play, which is the most challenging, demanding, and even exciting activity I perform with my students. We have to recreate a mediation setting in a agricultural business context at the presence of a language mediator. This is not easy as a task. It is developed throughout different days, and they have to recreate communities, just to design, define communities, and then interact among them at the presence of a mediator. This is a way of facilitating polycultural space, with spontaneously to improvise at certain points. It's not a scripted interaction. Training mediation abilities and working on stereotypes. Building stereotypes, deconstruct stereotypes about communities. And these are some pictures taken from the activity. In the first one, you can see the community, one of the 4 communities they developed. You can see from here that they are in a multilingual and multicultural context. And this is the interaction. Here, she's the mediator, and the 2 communities interacting together. They are improvising. It's not a descriptive interaction. It's quite interesting. The mediation tasks I've just presented just some examples are based on a very precise framework, outcomes, and feedback. So the lesson plan is based on objectives, of course, expanding learners' competencies, working on specialized tests, so advertising, politics, legal tests, etc. Then you have to apply some strategies. At the university level, of course, we're talking about linguistics, so the lesson plan may be adapted to different contexts, of course, teaching contexts. Reformulating another language, using translation studies and translation strategies, identifying language resources, and then processing and managing the interaction through the negotiation of the end. Of course, I have to take into account learners' needs and their feedback, of course, at the end of the activity. I believe that my students at the university level, of course, they need to enhance and develop their critical analysis on text and messages and interactions, the ability to identify and to adapt to other social cultural contexts, and the ability to use language in a wider range of situations. Their feedback was quite interesting. They revised their personal difficulties in working in group, first of all, so the cooperative learning and cooperative working within the classroom, by means of self-correction. And then they, I had the chance to work on their awareness of power asymmetries, status asymmetries, especially non-Western and Western interactions. Some implications for teacher education come from this kind of implementation. In general, from my research, we've been working on different research projects in Italy and for the Erasmus Plus project that I'm going to show you some details, and then tomorrow I'm asking Alessandra to give you some leaflets about the project. So I understand that teachers overall are aware of multilingual classes and new communicative needs. The need to prepare learners as successful communicators, accepting forms of chosen languages and health use of English as a lingua franca. The importance of introducing mediation activities, and the need for authentic materials. It was also important to consider the out-of-school experience, the use of ICT technologies, ICTs, and social media, and learners' awareness of their processes of acquiring a second language and the communicative competence in their daily life. Just to conclude, with new methodology in language teaching and alpha-aware language learning, the adoption of innovative measures, for example, communication activities and tasks. The enhancement of cross-cutting skills as a basis for developing intercultural competencies and training mediators, future mediators. We need to tailor-made programs, courses adapted to our learners' needs, coming from their feedback as well, and the promotion of language interaction activities, and the use of authentic materials, like for example TV series or visual materials, as well as role plays. And just the last focus on the REACH project. You're going to read the leaflet about the course. I'm currently working on this project, which is the REACH. Yes. English as a lingua franca practices for inclusive multilingual classrooms. We are working on this infrastructure. So the keywords of our project are health, English as a lingua franca, networking, creating a cooperative environment among teachers, refugees, keywords like migrant context, multilingual, multicultural context, innovative practices, for example, using trans languages, dialogue, legal, ICT, etc. Culture, since we are within an Erasmus Plus project involving 5 countries, European countries, of course, European cultural heritage, and how developing high-quality CPD by means of blended learning and experiential and peer learning among teachers. And to conclude, so tomorrow we are going to present our course, this continuous professional development course, with the aim of empowering English language teachers to integrate an alpha-aware perspective in their multilingual classroom. So if you want to visit our website, and we are going to present it tomorrow at 12:15. Our presentation is with English multilingual classrooms and alpha-aware perspective with Professor Gina Priore and Alessandra Cannelli. And thank you very much.